So I was going to go right after lunch and be the comic relief, actually. So maybe I'll be the comic relief.
I'm all for that.
Okay. Something light, but actually, yeah, it turned out to be heavy. Metal. Toronto was actually a rich time of solidarity in artist-run culture across communities and arts. And it was also an important time for asking, is your art your politics? Just before everything began to devolve. The good old days, I hear you saying. I'm Johanna Householder, and I performed with the fictional feminist group, the Clichettes, from the 70s to the 90s. The other two, Janice Latke is a professor in film and women's studies at McMaster, and Louise Garfield is now director of the Etobicoke Arts Council, fighting for air in coordination. I'm still a performer, although somewhat reluctantly, and a teacher of performance art, integrated media, and contemporary issues here at OCADU. And I was just reminded by Audrey that shortly after I started teaching here, I became the acting chair of the integrated media program. And I was able to implement some curriculum that was developed with Lisa Steele and others. And one course in particular stands out, a course called From the Margins to the Mainstream that was taught by Norbesi Phillips for a couple of years. So a very early attempt at decolonizing the curriculum. But that's not what I'm going to talk about. My interests are pretty wide-ranging, and my work has always been about or in relationship to found materials, especially found texts, but also found images, and found bodies, found physicalities, performed subjectivities, as you know, we draw from Judith Butler and others. Archives, of course, are the sources for texts and images. And so this past year, I'm on sabbatical. I began an experimental performative project with Artists' Archives, inside archives, particularly in performance archives, artists' archives that might contain references to performances and to artists' activations, activities, and activisms. So performing archives. This isn't a very original idea, but I've never been too concerned with being original. So in the early 2Ks, people were talking a lot about the archival turn in contemporary art, but I'm more interested in the archival twist, or the archival twist and shout, because archives are often most notable for what they don't contain than for what they do, as Deanna has already richly explicated. So I began to think that it might be important to mess around with the archives to make it a bit more evident that they are unreliable. So my project has been to deposit things into archives that I think might be useful there, and that should be there, and then in order to make this exchange reciprocal and circular, to take some things out and put them in the next archive I visit. So I started to do that by making links between my personal collection of performance art and art ephemera and the collection at the IARC, the Independent Archive and Research Center in Singapore. Sorry? Oh, sorry, okay. So these are the, I'll just show you quickly the things that I've deposited. And some of you will recognize your own materials there, especially focusing on race and representation, intersections with Indigenous work, and writing and re-emergence of feminist voices. So that's the archive, that's the founder, Lee Wen, blues musician and performance artist. And I then went to Calgary to the John Snow House Archives, where I was researcher in residence, where I found this book, and inspired by Dana, I brought it here to circulate. It's called Fear of Others, Art Against Racism, 1989 exhibition. So I'll circulate that, and then I'll wrap up.